items were made elsewhere. So they have had to kind of switch and turn over. But basically they make one that's a really hard, it's like a block, a black rubber, really thick rubber block. And you put that behind the door and lock that in, and then there's a strap, you know, that's just a loop like that, and you can hook your bands. For me, the best thing that I've given my clients is like a home kit that they can train with. And it's 3 different bands from Perform Better, a carabiner from REI that they order, because once your door anchor's in, it's so much easier to do the carabiner click on, click off. Clients find it much easier. There's not, you know, we had to do like tutorials to teach them how to put their band through the loop the band back, or loop the anchor through so you're not looping the band back. Like, it just became a big, you know, a big to-do. So what we really try to do is make it as simple and easy for them, but the different anchor points are super important for us, especially with your like shoulder and hip clients, because we need something that they can continue home practices. If you're an online trainer and such, you got to be able to pull. It's probably next to hinging like the most important thing for us to be able to continue to do. And in the warm up and this movement prep, ideally this would be something that our clients would do. Lost my yellow band. Oh, she took it off of there. Ideally this mobility movement prep would be something that we would ask our clients, if you're doing online training, you would ask them after you've taught it to them, ask them to do this on their own, like 15 minutes before. And basically we record this in, you know, 10 to 15 minute block of you explaining, giving the key cues, and then doing it. And so 10 to 15 minutes, they just follow your video. And you can set up like a private YouTube page, or you can host it on your website if you have compatibility for that, where they can just click on it and it plays, and they do that from 6:45 till 7. And then at 7, when they come on with you, boom, they're ready to go. Or if you're training live, we have that all written up on a board. They're ready to roll. You know, they just start doing it, and you want it to be the same thing every time. We change it maybe every 3 months. And when I do change it, I change like 30 or 40% of it. I just put in a couple new ones, because I want this to address everything, get them prepared and ready to move in all actions, all, you know, planes of movement, rotations, hinges, sagittal, frontal plane, all this. But I want it to be autonomic. I don't want to have to coach it, right? So once I have taught it and they've got it down, I want them to just be like, oh, I know exactly what to do, knock out the menu. And the anchor position is a big key to that. So setting that stuff up, especially knowing like this is where we're going to be, right? For a while, the potential of having online training or having home version workouts as a, you know, twice a week while they come and meet with you twice a week. This does give you an opportunity to build your business a little bit, and in addition to some additional services, right? We have some clients that'll do like 1 or 2 online workouts with me a week, but they also come when we're allowed to train, and they'll come back into studio or in the parking lot right now as we go. All right, I think we got some pretty good numbers on. Yeah, we got a good amount of you on here. I know quite a few folks will be watching the recording, as it is a little bit early for some on a Saturday or Sunday morning. So I'm gonna open that up. Let's go ahead and get rolling. You guys have the menu at home, should be on your PDF that I sent you. Basically, we're just gonna kind of walk through these, and we'll do some of them, but really the whole component is to learn these and to coach and cue through them as we go. So the bird dog, bridges is the first one that we're gonna do. There's different strategies from different coaches for bridging. And as I told you before, there's always a why. I'm always gonna give you a why. And one of the biggest ones that I've seen is that the toe position, trainers that coach and cue the toe being dorsiflex versus flat. And from what I've seen, I'm one of the few that teaches that dorsiflexion. And I think it's a key component for us. I look at every joint of the body as like a pulley system, right? And I want to have the other side active and on the antagonist while the agonist is trying to perform the movement. And I think having dorsiflexion when bridging is one of the key pieces that really teaches people how to pull with their hamstrings as opposed to toes being down and pushing with their quads, okay? So when you teach somebody to bridge, one of my favorite ways to teach it is to do the foot elevated bridge right out of the gate. And they don't really even do a whole lot. All you're trying to do is get them to bite, is a cue that I use, teaching them how to use their hamstrings and get engagement. So I'll have them on the floor and I'll have them pull their toes back, and they're trying to dig their heels in enough to where the box lifts. See what I'm doing there? So right away, I feel my hamstring. Where if I put my toes down and I push, the box will either slide away or it'll start to tip over, you know, in the opposite direction. So my key is hamstring, glute, and calf activation out of my bridge, my initial bite to pull in. And then we're gonna set up the platform. So now we're done with the box. They know how to activate, right? To set up the platform, and if you are, please do this with us. Pop to the floor and go ahead and hop in. Shoulder blades, I'm gonna tuck underneath. And I wanna create, we call that the platform. I wanna create the platform that I'm gonna be able to lever up and down on. If we don't do that, the shoulders stay flat, and as I bridge, there's a tendency to round or to pull in while you bridge, and that teaches you to like round your back out, okay? So shoulder blades tuck, palms go up and down to the side at about 45 degrees. Now this again is understanding that the client is comfortable doing this. If they have an impingement or they have some kind of shoulder issue that makes this palm up position hurt, we'll have them go neutral or thumbs up. What I don't want is palms down, because that again feeds to the internal rotation of the shoulder. Eventually we're going to load these with a band over the lap. And so as we bridge, the band would get tighter and I would return down, but that palm up anchor position is pretty important for us there. So shoulder blades are tucked, boom, boom, all the way together, proud chest up, palms are up, my toes are pulled up. So I'm dorsiflexing and I'm pulling my heels towards my butt, okay? This initial engagement will teach me, upon lifting the hip, to engage and pull from the hamstring and the glute rather than push with the quads to lift. And now the last thing that we're going to cue on, we coach the clients to this, is be the wheelbarrow. From the hip all the way up now to our platform between our shoulder blades, there should be zero play. Like a wheelbarrow, when you lift the handles, everything lifts in one piece. So I'm dorseyed, palms up, toes, lift in one piece, my chest raises, I lower down, barely touch my butt, lift again. Barely touch, lift again. Barely touch, lift again. So I'm constantly on, okay? Everything's moving in one piece as I bridge, lower and raise, as opposed to this we call floor humping, where the back and the shoulder blades basically stay and the hips just pull and tuck underneath. And typically that'll happen with anyone that has or has had a back injury. They will do that because they're afraid of levering too high, or they're afraid of getting too much activation in the glute because they think it's going to hurt their back, when really the rounding and the tucking of their butt is what's going to hurt it, okay? So if you can teach them to lever well on that platform, lift their hips as high as they can in return, ideally they should be like a wheelbarrow or a log that fell down. There's no play anywhere in the middle. It's just one solid piece that raises and lowers based on hamstring glutes pulling them up, not the quads pushing them up. So there's a lot to teach in a proper bridge, but the bridge is such an important piece for us because you're deloaded, right? This is the first place we start teaching anybody, especially hip or back or even knee injury clients, teaching them how to break at the hip and develop glute strength. Because when you're laying down, I'm not 250 anymore, right? The pressure on my back vertically is as thick as my belly, which is bigger than most. But it's not 6'3" pressure anymore pushing down on me. There's no compression anymore. There's really no shear force anymore. So when laying down, I can practice the hinge with minimal, or if not, very, very light tension or load. And then if I'm going to add anything to it, as long as my leverage components are good and I'm mechanically sound, I can start to load up and get some good resistance to develop the strength. And then once, of course, when we start with the hip and the back and coming up here next week, you'll see this progression. But once we do really well on the floor and we can load the floor, then we'll take it to vertical and we'll progress through many different straight leg hinge positions. And then eventually we would do a hinge with bent knee, which we call squats or deadlifts, right? But for our clients, we hinge on the floor, we hinge vertically, and then we hinge with a bent knee vertically. And that's kind of our progression up. Those squatting, one of you sent me a question about this the other day. Those squatting is something that we do every single day, and it's not like technically super difficult. Once loaded, there's a huge negative return to that if we don't do it correctly. So squatting is down the line for me. I want to master the ability to displace my hips and load my glutes before I'm going to move on to anything else vertical or anything else vertical bent knee or anything else vertical bent knee with load. So though it's simple and though we do it every day, we go to the bathroom and we sit down to eat and get in the car. Technical aspects from my end as the coach, I want to take my time with that and really make sure they're ready to load that squat well, and hopes that it's going to apply to everything else we're doing, you know, in our daily lives, not just in the session we do together. So the bridge, just one quick last review. Platform, shoulders together, palms are up. Lift as one piece as you come up. Your toes are dorsiflexed. Get that good high lift at the top. And the question becomes, do I squeeze my glutes together and then relax? If you're pulling, if your toes are up and you're pulling your heels towards your butt, your glutes are already on. So there's really no reason at the top to be like, oh, I got a credit card, squeeze my cheeks together. You should already be active in the glutes. That extra squeeze typically teaches us to tuck the pelvis and to try to like flatten out the back, which leads to sciatic symptoms and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I don't really coach that. I don't coach it in the deadlift, any of those actions that are, we kind of see that typical like squeeze your butt active position. The vulnerability, if you're not just perfect with that position, there's a very high risk of aggravating at the back and eventually, you know, injuring it. So bridge is such a big piece for us like that. That's why with today, you know, we're going to be here for 45 minutes or an hour and we just spent, I don't know, 10 on this one. It's such an important piece. Like this is one we got to get down, and I'll spend lots of time with a client to make sure, you know, they've got this, because this action sets up everything else that we're going to do, from picking up weights and moving them to even our push press as a hinge, right? To initiate the hip and go. All right. Our next one is called a reverse eagle. So thoracic rotation. Laying on your side, go ahead and pop down here and join me. I'm on my left side, just so we can use the same cues and we all match. And starting the basic version, knees are stacked at a 45-degree angle here, okay? The next step up, once we do this and we're like, okay, this is pretty simple, I'd like to make it a tiny bit harder. I'm gonna straighten my floor leg, my left leg, and I'm gonna pin my right knee to the floor. So everybody do that for a second. And you can just feel already a little bit more stretch through the lumbar here, just from establishing from stacked. It gives you a little bit more tilt, a little bit more rotation here at the hip. And then the next step up from that would be to straighten this leg. And now you're gonna feel a pre-stretch of the hammy and the glute. And if we try to initiate any rotation from here, it's gonna be pretty tight. So I wanna do like 5 of each one, just so you can feel them all. Let's stack the knees. And now our goal is chest down or closed position. And notice how far my hand reaches beyond the floor hand, okay? So I'm like high-fiving. I wanna go almost a full length of my hand beyond if I can. And then I'm gonna let my air out as I open back. And now the key here, I'm trying to get my shoulders to touch the floor and to create this thoracic rotation. But if I move my knees or if I open my knee and my hip, I've lost the purpose of that. So in the beginning, it might be a short range where that's as far as I get. But with each one of these, the more I let my air out and the more I deep breath and let my chest and my shoulders start to sink, the musculature this is kind of like a PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's like a PNF release without having the partner. Gravity is my partner. So with each one of these, I'm gonna let go, let my air out, and then deep breath in, get tight again, blow it out. We're gonna just try to sink each time into that. Okay, get our 5. Now let's try 5 more here. The knee pinned, and you'll notice you gotta preemptively kind of turn your hip a little more. And then to keep good activation, the floor leg, the left leg, dorsiflex. Pull that toe up and engage it, okay? Deep breath in and blow out. Look at my range. Look how short I am now, okay? So see where I'm at? This is about as much as I have. If I bring up my other knee, I can fall back another 8 inches, 10 inches. So it's giving you a pretty good step up as far as mobility will go. Okay, when I get to there. Okay, so try 4 or 5 of those. And then when you're ready, go ahead and prop that leg out. You can already hear the pressure in my voice when I get to there, and watch my range of motion now. About the same as the knee. It's about all I've got. Okay, but with each one, it still will let out a little further. And it just depends on your client's ability. I have some clients that they can go here, and this is kind of the next level when you're ready to add more rotation to it. If they can go all the way back, touch their shoulders to the floor, pretend I'm there, they would then bring up their other arm and then look away. And so that, ideally, we would get to where I'm like this, okay? Both shoulders on the floor, I'm flat in the chest, my arms are at 90, I'm looking this way, but these knees are all the way over. So that would give you, it would look like this. Now, pretend my knees stay, because I can't do it, obviously, right? So I'm closed, I would open all the way to the floor, move my arm back, return, closed, all the way open, open back to here, and return. And so you're creating a big range of motion through the thoracic spine, which is exactly what it's designed for and exactly what we're targeting. But really, the lumbar isn't moving. I'm a big believer that the lumbar isn't designed for rotation. If you really look at how the body moves, the lumbar, L1 through L5 to the hip, it's designed to just stay and stack and brace load. It's not designed to twist. Even the facet joints and the way the vertebrae is designed and the way the wings, the facet joints to the outside are set up, they're not pivoted. There's very minimal pivotability and rotation, and the angles for all the musculatures, origins and insertions for that are higher and steeper, more stable, where when you get up towards the thoracic and cervical spine, they're much wider, right? So they're disky and rotatable, and the lumbar is not. So we see a lot of people that like to do the eagle stretch, which is you lay flat on your back and you bring your leg up and over and your leg up and over, and now your thoracic spine basically isn't moving and your lumbar is doing a lot of twisting. I did that for years, throwing the discus and all that, and the hammer. That was a big piece for us, and I feel like that did a lot more damage than good for me. And just understanding now, like the anatomical makeup of the spine and where we want the rotations to occur and where we don't. The lumbar, in my opinion, is supposed to just be still and be stable, and that's your foundation. It's your center of mass. So that is your foundation for all the other movement around to articulate. It's like the puppet, right? Where you have the hand or the stabilizer, that stays, and then you move everything else around it, okay? But that's the center of movement. That's the center of base. So I want that to be sound, strong, stable, to stay put, and then I can work my rotations, my articulations around that, okay? So when then you get into like, well, what about rotation sports and swings and all that? Again, thoracic spine creates a lot of the rotation, but then you start to turn your hips. Really, the lumbar doesn't twist. You shouldn't see L5 set up like this and L3 or L2 or L1 rotated from there. In my opinion, that's just going to cause a lot of damage. And that may not be like groundbreaking, but that's a mindset that our industry has, especially in the sporting world, is that all that twisting, though you're laying down, should be a little easier for the spine, really causes more damage than good, okay? So the eagle stretch really isn't one we do much at all anymore. There's a very technical way to do that. We use straps where you hook the foot and you pull with the arm, and we always do it post-workout. So the body is pretty warm and loosened up and ready. If we're gonna, try to reap any kind of benefit from that, I wanna make sure people are really ready to do it, but it's pretty rare that we do it. And it's with more advanced clients, meaning they're a little more capable, don't have back injuries, okay? All right, on to the bird dog now. So we started flat on the back bridge, we rolled to the side. Now all of our stuff, supine or side lane, we're done. So we're moving up into the 6-point position. 6-point, meaning 2 toes engaged, 2 knees engaged, and 2 hands. Now I have multiple wrist injury issues going on. Most people, and you're fine to do this, okay? I just can't bear weight there for a while. I have carpal tunnel issues and some tendon issues. So I do my knuckles, but we run into a lot of clients who are also going to have wrist and hand issues, and this is completely fine. You want to make sure they're not doing this where they're pressing with their thumbs, or they're not doing a flat wrist down, like a flat knuckle where they can like push with their thumbs, almost like a track start. That's just going to cause more issue at the wrist too. It should be straight down, and the thumb, just like if you were going to punch something, you want your thumb racked. If you've ever done boxing or any mitt work or anything like that, you always wrap the thumb around the outside and brace straight through the middle of the hand. And we want their hands active. So don't just let them sit there. We want everything active, okay? Now, why tuck the toe? To engage that toe under, what we're practicing here with rockbacks, tactical frogs, bird dogs, any of this is the hallucis muscle, the big toe, okay? We want to engage because once that toe gets fused or starts to lose mobility, especially arthritic, issues. And then as we start to progress in age, once that big toe starts to lock up, you're screwed. Like your mobility and your ability to balance, to articulate, to move, your gait control, all that starts to change. And it all comes down to that big toe. So just this, what I'm doing right now is already working on mobility and stability at that big toe, that big joint, to make sure it's going to stay, you know, semi-mobile and stable enough to where, I don't want to use like the hingeability of the toe. Okay, is kind of the best way I can put it. You want to be able to get some play in there, and just practicing it with like a foot into the wall calf stretch. That's another big one that will help too, doing this guy, okay, where you put your foot straight into the wall and just kind of lever your foot up and return. Though most of us do that for a gastroc stretch or a soleus stretch, the toe pressing into the wall is getting a lot of play and mobility in there too. And this isn't to downplay the other 4 toes, but the big toe is really the key one, and the one that you're going to see get messed up the most. We also see a lot with older pops, bunions and bone spurs and all kinds of different actions going on at that foot. Again, that's beyond us, but encouraging them to get some kind of assistance and help to deal with that is going to improve their longevity and their mobility as they age. Feet are super important, way more than I thought, you know, years ago. This is a heavy area of emphasis we need to take care of. So you can accomplish a lot just by doing that. The transverse arch, the arch in the foot, gets stretched and gets play in it. And then your Achilles, another thing that isn't stretched all that often and can get really short. Side note, calf raises, when we do calf raises, always both feet on the ground. I used to do single leg calf pumps, and there's some very good research. I forget exactly where this came out of. I think it was Minnesota, when I was reading with the NSCA articles, and it was showing rehabilitation centers that do single leg calf pumps to strengthen, you know, the plantar fascias or your Achilles or your soleus or gastroc, Achilles tears, rehab all that. The range of motion, though all the load is on that one foot and it's getting work, the range of motion is less because you're now taking something that's used to moving half of your body weight, and you're putting all of your body weight on it and asking it to go through a full range of motion. Most people don't have the strength to do that. So let's say your full range on both feet, you can go up 6 inches and down 6 inches. When I ask you to go to 1, the average person could do like 2 or 3 inches, and that's it. So in a sense, though we're, you know, rehabbing the injury or trying to get that area stronger, by doing that, you're creating a shorter range of motion. Short, tight muscles do what under stress? They tear. So in many cases that we're finding, like, yes, we're rehabilitating this Achilles and getting it stronger, but the likelihood of re-injuring it was much higher than if they did both feet, big range of motion, and then they improved each side by overloading it. So both feet down, as I do my calf raises, I'd hold a 40-pound dumbbell in my right hand, and I'd do 20, and then I'd put it in my left hand and I'd do 20. And so you have the support of both legs working through the range of motion, but the overload of the weight, overloading the right side and then overloading the left. Or you can do a band, I'll show you one of these, a band under the left foot, hold it in the right. And so as you do your raises, your anti-rotation stability issue at the ankle and the foot, but you're also increasing load, decreasing load. So think about that when you're working with clients. The single legs, like, we've completely cut them from our program because Achilles injuries and such, as we age, it's almost as bad as a broken bone. The recovery rate from that and the improved quality of life, down the drain, okay? All right, so I'm gonna struggle getting through all this if I keep going on all my stories, but I love telling you guys this stuff. So engaged here. The bird dog is about length, not height. So left leg, when you teach this, left leg established, toe pulled back, reach through the heel. And once they feel balanced, have them reach the right hand up at the thumb, thumbs up, and then length here. As long as I can get, bring them down together. Right leg first, establish. Left arm comes up, bring them down together. And after you do a couple where the leg gets set, then the arm, leg gets set in the arm, then you can start to ask them to do them at the same time. Left and right, hold, switch. Left and right, hold, switch. And then I'd say, you know, at least a month, maybe 2 of practicing this. And when the client gets to a point where you're like, okay, they look pretty sound, pretty solid, you can try to do some ipsilateral. This is a contralateral setup. You can try to do some ipsilateral. You have to shift to the right, raise the left, return together. The shift is important. We want that. So now we're just adding, we're adding a balance and coordination component. And it's just like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you'll get. But transitioning and shifting the center of mass, this becomes a balance and stability component, along with a mobility exercise to help warm them up. So we'll put on there to do 20 bird dogs, 10 contralateral, 10 ipsilateral. And they have to hold the ipsilateral. I mean, it's easy, very easy if I just throw it up and throw it up. And it looks like I've got it down, right? But if I pause on one of these, you see I lose my balance, right? I'm just shifting momentum, holding it there, and then I coordinate it long enough to come back. I want to stabilize and hold 1, 2, 3 seconds, engage, reach, make them work, and return. And the shift is okay. Remember, we're learning to manipulate our mass outside its center frame, outside its box of normal movement. Okay, the kneeling windmill. Again, this is all assuming your clients can get up and down off the floor. We have the plyo boxes. You guys have seen the ones that are like this, but it's a full box, right? 2 by 2 foot, one of the best investments you can do. So if your clients can't get to the ground, buy 2 12-inchers and put them side by side, and now you have a higher floor. So at least we can get on the back, they can do stuff. Putting them up on like stretching tables, really bad idea. Really unstable, wobbly, and in most cases it's pretty high, so it's harder for them to get up and down, and just greater risk of something kind of going wrong if you're not there to supervise. Also, we're not teaching them how to get down, right? We want to eventually practice getting down, because our ability to get down to the floor, do the stuff, and get up is a huge fall prevention or fall confidence builder. If I do fall, I can get myself off the ground, right? All this is kind of anticipating any bad issues coming up or anything's coming up in the future. So this one is assuming that the client is capable of being on their knees. Now we're transitioning to the standing position. So if I'm on boxes, I'll show you the standing version of this in just a second. It's really difficult to do this on a box because it can be kind of wobbly and they're up higher on one knee than they would be on the floor. So ideally, I'm in a split, full kneeling position. And then to windmill is like the get up when you start to transition for Turkish get ups, American get ups, whatever you call them. You roll to the side, up to your hand, you lift your hip, you've lifted your hip, you've pulled the leg through in the sweep, and then you ended up in this side windmill position. But if I just tip straight over to the side, it's hard for me to get really straight in here. So the first action we want to teach them is to pivot that back foot off center line. So here's down center line, like I'm on railroad tracks, right? This foot's on one, this foot and knees on the other. I'm going to pivot my foot to be in line with my left leg or a little bit beyond it. And that allows my hip to open. And so now I can hinge through here really well. And when I come down to the floor, again, I'm doing my fist. They can do a flat hand. They have to completely unload. Clients get in a hurry and they just kind of touch a hand here and they reach and they return. And when you just touch a hand down, yes, it looks like you're doing the action, but you're not getting to deload your back. Allow this trunk to shut off. All the weight sits on the arm, and now I get a big external rotation through here. I'm reaping the benefit of a deactivated trunk, but into a laterally hinged and rotated open position. If I don't do that, if I just touch my hand here, my back, my erectors, my obliques, my trunk, it's all on. So I never get like the passive stretch component to it because everything has to hold me here so I don't fall over, right? So the deload's super important. And you get clients that have a really hard time getting there, like they don't have the mobility. You grab a yoga block. These guys are great for in-betweeners, or if you have a sandbag or a sand ball, jam balls, anything that they can put some weight onto, and just have them hinge to here, and I can do the same action. It's just not as deep, okay? It's keeping me up an extra 3-4 inches, but the benefit of this action is huge. It's probably my favorite mobility to do. With having hip and back issues, this guy opens up so much, and it does so good for you. So first step, pivot the foot off center line, lateral hinge over, teach hip displacement. You guys see how I'm pushing that out? You don't want to just tip over. Now my back's done all the work in the rounded aspect. I need to displace my hip out like 45 degrees sassy, right? Like sassy hip, stick that tush out there, get your weight down, unload, open up, look up. That's a big piece. And we're trying to open backwards here as far as we can. And then keeping my head up, I'm going to bring my hip back up under alignment. So I'm working some activation here at the hand, my head going where I want it to, displace. Remember, the floor is not going anywhere, so they don't need to look down there. Open, and then return. If they have neck issues going on, just have them stay straight ahead and they could even watch themselves in the mirror if that's something that helps in working on this hip displacement and push back. And eventually, the reason we're practicing this too is this is our sweep through, right? For our get up, that's this action. As I pull through, there's my windmill, and I'm ready to do my get up, okay? So 10 one side, 10 to the other. Then we're gonna come to the stand, so come on up. All right, RDLs, simple to be able to do a traditional RDL where I'm just hinging and returning, right? That could be fine. What I like to do for movement prep and progressing, because we're looking at mobility increase, hip displacement, hip stability, like we're trying to get a little bit more than just the basic now because we've done our basic simple stuff on the ground, okay? So we're gonna go to something called a center stance RDL, single leg RDL progression. So you take a traditional stance. Oh, I forgot to show you the standing version of the half kneeling windmill. Okay, I'm in split stance here, not super wide, okay, because I want enough room where I can displace my hip still. And we have to get that sassy hip to stick out to the side, slide the hand to their knee, and then we can open and return. But if I just round over, my back, my trunk, all this is getting lateral crunch overexposure on this side. I have to be in close enough to where I can unlock my hip, and it's like an RDL to the side, okay? I'm sticking my butt, my tush out. My back is still sound. I'm deloading by putting weight on my knee or down to my shin, and then I'm gonna open up, same action here. Okay, I'm working from this open hamstring, open hip, lateral displacement position, then I'd switch and hit the other side. Okay, so now with the single leg RDL progression, one of my new favorites, I just started doing these maybe 2 months ago. We call it a center stance. So regular RDL position, shoulders are square. I'm gonna move, shift all my weight to my left leg and move my right foot back about a foot's length further back than my other. And then I'm gonna put my toe here for balance and stability, and then big displacement of my hip back, and I should feel this huge left leg, stable leg hamstring stretch, big stretch, bigger than if I'm doing a bilateral one, right? Because I'm getting this preemptive prep. The hip can unlock, I'm levering onto this leg, big hamstring stretch, but I don't have to worry about the balance of being in the single leg yet because my other foot's on the ground. So it's a tweener, right? It's in between regular RDLs and the single leg RDL. But the more I do this, the more hamstring stretch and the better hip displacement and like pelvic tilt ability I've been getting, even over the single leg. The single leg, I think we're recruiting so much to try to be stable that we're not truly letting our hip unlock enough to increase the range of motion or to work to a high range of motion. So the toe in the back just kind of being up as like a balance point, huge relief for us. Take balance off. We will work balance at another time. But for here, I want to get that high hamstring stretch, this big range of motion. And then improved into warm up is we'll load it, big band, or excuse me, small band, 1/4 inch band, but the long one, the 39 or 41 incher, whichever one you get, depending on who you order from. They're anywhere in between there. I'm gonna do a anti-rotation, so a cross setup. I've doubled the band into my right hand under my left foot, center stance position, unlock, the band gets loose. I still have some tension, but not a ton. Big hamstring stretch. I had a good eccentric. My chin's engaged. I'm holding the softball under my chin. Okay, I'm not locked down. I'm just holding to neutral. And then as I bring my hip up, tight, 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 I'm pulling my shoulders back to neutral. My chin stays engaged. Eccentric down slow, nice, quick. 3, 2, 1, up quick. And notice the hips move back, the hips move forward. The hips move back, the hips move forward. And just doing a couple of these, 5 or 6, I'm already feeling just that good because of the time under tension and the high hip angle. I'm feeling a great hamstring stretch. So not only is this a little bit of a strength builder while we're in our mobility, but a big range of motion gain and improvement from one stance to the other. Again, we'd hit both sides, okay? All right, now moving on to the anchor. What am I doing on time here? I got to set up my clock. Okay, we're doing okay. All right, so moving on to the high anchor. Bands of your choice. I like to go above my head height if I can. Basically, just get it as high as they're capable. Band choice, light, because we're in our movement prep. We're still trying to warm up here a bit. This is called a reverse push-up. Now I have a whole series of shoulder stuff we do with these high, medium, or low anchors. Remember, a low anchor point, the counter of wherever the band is anchored, that area is going to be targeted. So if I have low, opposite of that, it's going to be a lot of neck, occipital-based movements. If I'm shoulder height, it's going to be right between my shoulder blades, rhomboid-based movements. If I'm overhead, okay, or above head height, a lot of my action is going to be like low rhomboid lat. So that's kind of where I'm targeting, is this area, this ability to allow my scapulas to protrude and to retract, but I'm leaving my neck alone, and I'm trying to increase some good range of motion in there. Now, everything I look at, I'm like, how can we get the best bang for our buck with this? As opposed to having to add another exercise, the reverse push-up is just an anti-arthritic grip, is what I call it. We do so much gripping and so much wrist flexing that we're really strong on this side, but not so much on the back. So any opportunity I get to open the hand and extend at the wrist to build this musculature back here, we're gonna take it, okay? And when we get to the hand and grip, hand elbow one that we're gonna do, which by the way, I'm gonna have to move, I'm gonna have to switch a couple of these because I have wrist surgery that I'm doing on my left at the end of September. So I think it's like episode 5 and 7, I'm gonna just switch the topics. There's no changes or anything date-wise and whatnot. It's just the topics I'm gonna switch. So I'll remind you guys of that on Wednesday. I'll have a new schedule up for us. So now I'm gonna put my hands in, band at a high anchor. My hands are gonna go in anti-arthritic, and we'll ask, clients will say, oh, this is a little hard on my skin. Totally get it. They can wear gloves when they do this. If you're a glove wearer, that's fine. I'm not a huge fan of it, but they can do it. If you are gonna wear gloves, ask them to get receiver gloves, as opposed to like workout gloves that have all that extra padding. Basically, they just need a line in between. And receiver gloves, though it looks funny, and I saw Mark Wahlberg doing this, and I'm like, why is he wearing receiver gloves? And then I got a pair and I tried them day and night. Like, such a great difference. If you have sensitivity at the hand or wrist issues, the receiving gloves are great because you have a liner in there, but they're tight and they stick to you, and they're not going to ball up and bunch up, which is the issue with like regular weightlifting fingerless grips, is there's too much material in there. And so it gets a little sweaty. You start to get pinches and grips. You don't have good contact on what you're trying to hold on to. So dropping it, things become an issue. So the receiver gloves are great, and they'll last for a long, long time. So they can do that, or you can just put a towel, like a little face rag, over the back of their hands while they do this action, or if they're comfortable, do so. Or if you have the NT loops, the material bands, those work great too. They're very comfortable on the skin. So I'm going with a triangular grip. See how I hold that there? My hands, my palms are vertical, and I'm pulling apart, abduction, engaging, and then I'm pulling under my chest and return. Under my chest and return. And so for the first couple, let's say we're gonna do 20 of these. For the first 10, I'm gonna try to keep my fingers vertical. And then for the next 10, I'm gonna go vertical and rotate out to 90, vertical, back to 90. So I'm getting a little corkscrew action in the shoulder. These are awesome. So you're gonna feel forearm, bicep brachii, brachioradialis. You're gonna get a lot of that in there. But we're also gonna get this little corkscrew at the shoulder blade scapula, which is gonna help us a ton for our mobility and strength stability around that shoulder girdle, okay? Remember, the goal of the shoulder girdle, we're trying to get the hood, that coracoid process, to open, the acromioclavicular joint to have less pressure on it. So we're trying to get everything to open up there in that corkscrew action, finishing like Superman, right? The proud like superhero pose at the top. Get into that position. You're gonna see a lot of really good benefit from this. Clients go, oh, this is really bothering me. Can I just grab on like normal? Yes, you can, but we're not getting that anti-arthritic benefit, which is a big piece of this. So try your best to find a version that will work for them. And then we have, if you guys have heard of Spud Incorporated, they make all the pulleys that we use. They sell, and I don't have one, but they sell a handle series with that looks like this. So basically it's a strap, and then there's another one on this side, right? So there's 2 strapped handles, kind of like that. Kind of like that. So it looks like this. Now you can take those and just put your hands through, and you have that really smooth, comfortable, and we have like 4 or 5 of those, and our clients really like those. It makes life much, much easier. So if there's, this is such a great benefit, it's worth investing in something like that to be able to do these comfortably. Or you can just break out the towels, okay? All right, so that's our reverse push-up, high anchor. And now low anchor, if you have angle 90s, again, you guys, I don't endorse products for any financial, this is just me telling another pro stuff that I like. Angle 90 handles are great for this. You can get, like I talked about, the carabiners, click those on there. You only need one handle for this one. The ergonomic component to this is so comfortable for people with any kind of hand issues. Coming out of surgeries for me, holding on to bands wasn't the most comfortable, and that's how I found these. Any kind of handle will benefit, but these are kind of cut and designed to fit in your palm really well. Palm down, split stance, contralateral stance, palm down. Thoracic rotation is okay. My hips, my knees, feet, all that stay put. So I don't have any rotation back in here yet, okay? I'm just gonna stay put for this one. Rotation at the shoulder, little thoracic rotation forward, good. Palm down to palm up, thoracic rotate, thoracic rotate. So a little pull start in here. This can be a regular exercise, but I love to include these in our warm-up because it gets this rotational component for us. I did 10. I'm gonna go ipsilateral now, right? Because I wanna be able to get both cross-sectional activations from my shoulder, left to right, right to right. So any kind of movement actions I do through my day, I'm ready for it, okay? Rotation at the shoulders, good movement in there. Love the pull start. Good action from lighter tension, heavier tension, benefit at the wrist, this natural supination action, something we want to train a lot. Great benefits across the board. So mobilities, a little bit of band work, we're pretty much ready to go. Now we're going to transition into some gait controls and some other actions that are going to get us moving and get a little bit more hip work. You can see how hip heavy these are because of the population we're working with. This is a huge target area for us. The hip and the back and really the knee, things that we target for the hip and the back are going to trickle down, and they're almost exactly the same as far as benefits of. If you have a hip issue, I'd have you do this. If you had a back issue, I'd have you do this. If you had a knee issue, I'd have you do most of this plus a couple of other things. They all work really, really well together, okay? So mobility menu done. Primer, mobility primer now we come into. This is called a 3-step hinge and hold. 3 steps always gives us an opposite. Hinge and hold gets us a little prep, displacement, hinge, displace the hip, soft knees as I displace here. I hold for 3 seconds and I take 1, 2, 3 steps, prop the hip, push back. This is very similar to the center stance RDL that I did, but instead of the foot being behind, it's in front, okay? So shoulder width, heel to toe relationship, meaning my front toe and my right heel are on the same line, okay? Any further, it gets really hard to displace the hip without locking your knee or without rounding your back to get deeper. So just a heel to toe relationship, both hands here into the hips. I push back, and I call this the third base coach position, right? You see those guys at third base with both feet, and they're looking in safe or slide or whatever, I don't know baseball. Okay, score. So we displace the hip, push the hip back, hold for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, come up, the back foot goes first, 1, 2, 3. I'm propped on the other side, push forward. Now you can do these like 10 forward, and then you can do 10 going backwards. So now we're practicing posterior displacement and practicing the client moving in the direction of most common direction of falls. 70% of our falls go backwards. So if I can teach my clients to get comfortable displacing their hips, but also stepping back with their hips first, not their upper body first, right? They displace, 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 hinge and return. They just want to make sure they're in an environment where they're not going to trip or run into anything behind them, because we're trying to practice not falling down, not actually falling down. So 3-step hinge and hold, 20 of those. I do 10 forward, 5 on each leg, 10 backwards. If the client's good, if not, you just keep going forward, okay? Then we're going to do the 3-step RDL. So 1, 2, 3, I can do my center stance one again here if the client's not ready, but ideally we're going to do a single leg RDL, 1, 2, 3, single leg RDL. Now the single leg, not to spend a ton of time on this because I'll do so in a couple of weeks. The single leg RDL, you're a teapot. The handle has to get lifted up first for the spout to start to tip. What we don't want is them to tip forward and try to handle catch up at the end, because that's just all back loading. So I'm tall, shoulders are engaged, I'm neutral. I'm gonna pull from the glute, toe up, dorsiflex position, engage my glute and my hamstring, and pretend somebody's holding you by the Achilles, right? and they're just gonna lift, lift, lift. And if you just keep lifting your leg, your upper half will just counter naturally. I shouldn't feel like I have to tip forward or do anything with my upper half. I just keep lifting my leg and my upper half will counter and then come back. 1, 2, 3, shoulders engaged, toe up, heel up, right? I'm engaged and locked on that back leg. And just the higher I lift my leg, actually the better balance, because the fulcrum now, I have more weight like a pendulum countering me as I go. If I'm short with that back leg and I tip over forward, I want to tip and go head heavy, because now my fulcrum's heavier at that end. Does that make sense? So the key to this whole thing is just the higher handle, the higher your leg, the better. Now here's the cheat, okay? When we start to hinge, our natural reaction is to rotate and to try to open this hip to come down, because I'm more stable in an open position versus closed. I can recruit from my back and my erector muscles, where if I'm closed and I'm squared in, and the key here is to take that back foot when you dorsiflex and point it, even a little bit of internal rotation, point it at the floor leg, point it, point it, point it, point it, as I go into my hinge there, and you'll see some balance and some struggle, but it keeps the hip closed as they go down and up. And that closed hip component is huge for this hamstring to be active and to work range. If not, if I open even a little, my back's just compensating. I'm not really getting what I'm pursuing, what I'm trying to achieve. So that's the 3-step, 1, 2, 3 RDL, 1, 2, 3 RDL. If you have a client that can't do this, just have them hold on to a band and have them march in place. 1, 2, 3, hinge, they have the band. 1, 2, 3, hinge, they have the band. So we're still practicing, and the band gives, but it still makes me correct, right? Where if I just hold on to the post, there's no correction at all. I'm just stable because I'm hanging on to something. The band will give you that in between. You're not getting a lot of transition or gait practice, that's okay, but we're getting the action, we're getting the correctability. There's a tweener there that's gonna see some benefit. All right, mini bands. Go ahead and throw your mini band on. Down to my last couple of minutes here. I did schedule for extra time, as always. Crazy I go over, right? I like to talk, gang. I hope you don't mind. Okay, bands are on here. Now these are the Rogue bands, and I wish I could tell you like pop on Rogue and go get them. They're really comfortable bands. I like them a lot. I was only able to get orange and red because they were sold out completely of their full sets. And I think orange is the only thing they have left now. And you have to get on like a little alert list that will tell you when their product is available. And I've been waiting for months, guys. For months, I've been trying to get a new bench. For here, this is one that I stole from the gym. I bring it home on the weekend, so I have one. But I really like these bands, and I wish I could tell you to go order them, but they're not available. Perform Better has some, but bands are really hard to get right now. Okay, the band lateral step. You can do 10 by 10s, 5 by 5s if you have space. We do like 50s by 50s because we've got a little corridor area in there. So the band, always above the knee or below the knee to shin. We don't go at the ankles because it's too long of a lever. And we never go at the knee because of the pressure direct on the joint and its stability point. Never want to go there. The higher the band, the easier it is on your hips. So think of this as long fulcrums, you know, long lever arms. The higher up, there's going to be some greater work. You don't have as much advantage, but it's easier because the pressure isn't so great on the lever arm. So starting with clients, light bands above the knee. If they struggle, move that up a little bit. If it's easy, you can try moving it down below the knee, maybe mid shin. Beyond that, we never go to the ankle. I would just up band then and go back to here. So if red was easy, I would take the band, put on blue, I think is the next one. If that's easy, I go to black. And eventually you can get to a point where you have 2 on, okay? Shoulder width apart, toes are square, butts out in my athletic position, my little power position stance or my athletic setup. And then I'm gonna set from position here, 6-inch step out, push the knees. Don't allow this valgus collapse. Push the knees, 6-inch step in, I'm right back where I started. 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches. And I'm gonna keep that tempo all the way down and all the way back, wherever it is that I'm going, okay? And we want to establish depth and stay there. You'll see people doing this where they're bouncing up and down, or you'll see them lumbering from side to side. Establish your depth and just be still and let the hips do their work. Now, 2 things you'll start to see. You'll start to see this collapse where the band isn't moving anymore because the knees have closed in. So keep pushing out, okay? Keep that action. And then the other thing that you're gonna see is as they're starting to struggle, they'll start to get more vertical. And now the back is recruiting as opposed to hips being out and my glutes doing the work. So you wanna make sure they're staying in this good, athletic, near vertical shin position, as opposed to too straight up and down on the torso. Shins are no longer vertical. A lot of knee pressure, a lot of back recruitment. Hips back, vertical shin, good tension, step, 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 step. I'm gonna knock out 100 of these, 50 each direction, break it up how you need. The monster walk, always in my opinion, backwards. Forward stepping with band is hip flexor active. I don't need a whole lot more of hip flexor work. We get enough of that because of everything we do through the day is forward, right? So my monster walk has tension, displace, and I'm taking 3-inch steps, and I'm very choppy. Okay, I want choppy. And I'm just gonna keep in a constant tempo going backwards. And what this is a short activation of abductors medius minimus, but they're constantly on. Okay, plus I'm practicing, like we talked about, my reverse direction body displacement. This is a fall preventative component for me. I know there's nothing behind me. I know I'm not gonna fall down, so I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder, which twists me, right? I can just stay and be steady and practice this. But again, with this clientele, we have to be confident that they can do that. And until then, you just gotta march with them and be next to them until you're like, you're good. I have confidence, you'll be able to survive this. You're not gonna fall and make things worse. And then we take a huge step backwards. Okay, last two. How am I doing? Oh, we're good. Okay, last two. This is called the seated abduction series, okay? I just lost my band, it rolled on me. Let me grab a drink here real quick, guys. Still dealing with a lot of smoke here at my house. And I'm sure you can hear my fans. I've got a mister and a filter going on this side. My fan going over here, trying to keep me cool, but also trying to keep some clean filtered air going in here for me. It's not terrible, but maybe we should have blue skies and a nice sunrise right now, and it's orange outside. So it's enough to make you feel a little gloomy. All right, so I'm gonna show you from both angles here. Light band, 90 degrees at the hip. Some clients you start off with, you might wanna have them higher, so seated, 2-3 inches above parallel. We never wanna be below parallel. You get too deep in the bucket here, you're gonna recruit from your back no matter what. So abduction series, there's 120 reps. I'm gonna sit up here tall, and then I'm gonna hinge forward. So I'm perfectly vertical. I'm gonna hinge forward 2 inches, and it always has to be done in this order. And then from here, I'm gonna show you a front view in just a minute. You're gonna pull the band apart, pull apart, pull apart. And you'll notice my feet are moving. So basically I hinge on the outside of my foot. I have a slight hinge forward of just 2 inches. I'm gonna knock out 20. On the fly, I'm gonna sit up straight. I'm gonna knock out another 20. And then on the fly, I'm gonna lean back about 2 inches and I'm gonna knock out another 20, okay? From the front view, okay, like so. I'm up tall, I hinge forward 2 inches and I'm pulling. So I want my foot just to lock in place and I'm working those abductors like we just talked about, 2 and 3, sit up straight and then lean back, okay? Now, why always this order? I'm not gonna go into this too deep because active insufficiency is a very deep, long explanation. But basically speaking, if you think about your hip flexors, when I'm standing, they're at good tension, okay? You see that, right? As I sit down, they go to slack. So if I'm on slack and I hinge forward, I put it on even more slack, okay? So my band here, there's so much slack in there, there's no potential kinetic, like eccentric slingshot strength to help me because the origin and insertion are closer to each other, so there's no potential there for any energy. So anything that I'm gonna do, it's gonna be a relaxed, slack muscle trying to engage. Because I'm fresh, I'm doing this first, I wanna put my hip in the worst possible advantaged position to try to recruit and do the action because I'm most fresh, right? I'm at my strongest or I'm not fatigued at this point. So worst position I can be in, it's most slacked. And I'm gonna knock out 20. Now, as I start to get a little more fatigued, I'm gonna lean to my vertical position, right? I'm gonna go vertical, and that's gonna take my origin and insertion, even though it's really, really minimal, right? We're talking like tenths of an inch as we go. As I move from this position 2 inches up, I get a little bit of a stretch in there. I get a little bit of tension to help me, okay? Not a ton, it's still on slack, but it's a little better than the position I was just in, but I'm a little more fatigued because I'm 20 reps in. So then I'm gonna knock out 20 there. Then I'm gonna lean back, and in this position, I don't wanna use my back support because that defeats the purpose. I wanna hold myself here, but I also don't wanna be in a position where I've leaned back 8 or 10 inches and now I feel all this core activation. I just wanna lean back, neutral, just 2 inches, just enough to make my hip flexors go on, because now they are tighter and active, and I'm in my best position seated possible, but I'm most fatigued, okay? So worst position, fresh, little better, tired, best, real tired. Make sense? So you always do that order. 20, 20, 20, take a little break, do it again. That gets us 120 reps. And then your very last one, standing or seated. I love this. Like we just talked about that reverse push-up, but this guy gives you a bracing arm, an anchored arm, while the other one does the reverse push-up action. So my thumbs are in, my hands are in, everything's inside. I'm pushing away like I'm putting my hands on the wall, and I want to be about shoulder height, maybe a tiny bit above, just a little bit, okay? I'm going to keep my extension here at the wrist, and I'm going to withdraw my thumb back to my chest, but I'm pushing forward to this other brace arm. I'm going to finish my right arm and then return, finish my left arm, return. One arm has to finish before you start the other side, or else we call this machine gun style. This is a different one, and it's really, really difficult, and you don't have the stability set yet to achieve that. So anchor, finish 1, anchor, finish 2, anchor, finish 3. And I'll knock out, there's 60 on this list, 30 of these on each side. And if the client's really burning out, they could do like 15 and then rest and do 15 and just kind of piece their way through it. But ideally, I want to fatigue in between that shoulder blade. And as I'm doing this too, right in this engagement here, okay, I'm getting that brachioradialis, bicep brachii. I'm working all these extensor stabilizing muscles. All the musculatures around the outside of my wrist, which by doing so is opening up my carpal tunnel. Okay, it's starting to open up that strength-based. One pulley side collapses all the time. When I open that puppy up, this starts to free up in my articulation, blood flow, circulation, capillary density down there. It's neuropathy based on impingements, and collapsing is what carpal tunnel is, not based on diet and other injuries that have come about, right? So neuropathy meaning just we're getting nerve damage, or you're getting restricted blood flow where you're not getting sensation or feeling in your fingers anymore, because this guy's just getting smushed from all of this that we do. So the more we open, the better. Big retraction through that shoulder blade. You get a little protrusion as you push away. So we're getting a lot of articulation, good movement through the shoulder girdle. And then you can add, as a little bit more advanced, just like we did up there, you can add the rotation. So as I come back, I can rotate my hand out, push forward, rotate out, push forward. And as I go through that guy, I'm going to get a little more peak, a little more bicep, a little bit more like teres major, teres minor, pretty much all aspects of the shoulder, rotator cuff, infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres minor, teres major. You get some subscapularis as far as an anchor goes, but it's not getting a whole lot of articulation or movement, okay? So that's a really fun one. And then as you get more advanced, and we typically program this into a workout rather than a movement prep or the primers, is the machine gun style, meaning that one side has to cycle before the other one comes up. And this is a gasser. Like this is something you can do with clients when you just did like 10 overhead presses and 10 upright rows, and now you just want to finish off their arms. This is like a burnout, like rope slams or like jam ball slams or med ball throws, like something that's just high tempo. I'm doing a bunch here so you can try to hear my voice as I go. It's a gas out, and you're just going to get so much work in between these two pieces, which are the two we need the most, right? I'm already too developed here from everything we do through the day. And I'm already lacking in the front from all the flexion that I do through the day. So if I can extend and withdraw, and then extend, withdraw, and rotate, I'm peaking up all the positions, all the areas that I really want to address. And we're checking multiple boxes with everything that we do. Not only warm up, movement prep, as far as the joint goes, the increased capillary exchange with blood exchange and blood flow, loosening the joints, lubricating the joints in preparation for more movement to come. But we're also building strength in the areas that we're lacking. So that's like 4 boxes that I want to check each day. And if I can do some of that, if not all of that, in my movement prep, it's even better, okay? Though I was on point and I'm outside in a warm environment, I'm sweaty just from doing that stuff. And I didn't even do full sets. I was just doing enough to show you. And when I say like on point, like I put out a lot of energy to be able to teach and to coach and to go through this. That will get you warm and sweaty as it is. So if I can go through that and I don't really have to go into like, okay, it's warm up mode now. I'm already kind of there, right? I haven't done enough to where I'm ready to go lift heavy weights yet, but I've done enough to kind of connect me to that next piece where I could get on a light hex bar. I could get on a light bench press. I could get on a light pivot point or whatever it is you have coming that day and do a set of 10 and another set of 10 and then ramp it up a little bit and then I'm ready to train. But like temperature improvements, old school, hop on the bike for 20 minutes and then come over. That's just a huge waste of time, in my opinion, right? It's not valuable stuff. That's just, I'm just filling time so I can charge you. And I don't, you know, if you're doing that, please don't take it personal. I did it too. I just didn't know any better in the beginning, but it's like, we can do so much more with our time and with our clients, to our clients' benefit when we program this stuff out. And none of this was like dire. If they do their bird dog wrong, it's not going to hurt them or kill them in the sense of like, we're going to have irreversible, you know, damage done. This is all stuff that if I teach it 2, 3, 4 times with them and they kind of get it down and they have a video to follow and I'm giving them all the same cues I taught them with live, we should be able to do most of the stuff, if not all of it, should be able to do it on their own just fine. And you can always do checkbacks, right? Like, hey, Monday, Wednesday when we train together, I want you to do this beforehand. On Fridays, don't. I want to do it with you. And so you'll see them live and get to go through it with them. And now you're like, okay, we're getting the hang of this. Every Friday is kind of like our check-in. And after a month of doing that, you can be like, okay, you're good, right? Let's just keep doing it. And at 7 o'clock, we're ready to roll for online training, stuff like that. If you're in person, you know, we have a 7 o'clock start. We'll ask clients to get there at 6:45 and to do all this in the side movement prep area. And as I'm training people and watching what they're doing, I still see, I'm like, you got to reach a little longer with your bird dog, Susan, right? And I can still kind of coach and cue that, but I don't need to be right on top of them like bird dogs. Again, great. We do this every day. You've got it down. It's not that kind of dire, right? So I want that to be autonomic. I want them to get this stuff down and practice it. And then with a lot of our clients, we do this, you know, the video, and we'll send them a printed picture of it too. They'll do it when they're on vacation. They'll do it on their days off. You know, a lot of my clients get up on weekends and do that and then go on their walk or go on a hike or go play tennis or golf or whatever it is that they're doing. So that's why we call it movement prep. It's just preparing you for any movement. It's not pre-strength and conditioning warm-ups. It's not pre-golf warm-up. It's movement prep. And it's one of the best pieces that we changed, you know, 10 years ago. We started doing this with our clients. One of the best things that we've improved and worked with our clients. Huge joint stability, mobility, and health benefit improvements. All right. I hope you enjoyed this. Give you a little insight on how moving forward, we'll have, you know, when I'm going to do live demos with you, we're pretty much done with PowerPoint stuff. Like, we're just going straight into doing now. So you can, especially when we're in the gym, in the studio, and I'm doing stuff, I'm going to have everything set up. So asking you to participate, I know would be difficult, but it'll give you a good opportunity to see it, to hear it, to see how it's all set up. I'll go through all that stuff with you. Okay. So this Wednesday, noon, Pacific time, I will see you then. So this is what you do, and you have them warm up, and then they fit it all in about 15 minutes. Never mind, you got to it. Yes, yeah. So yeah, that's, you know, 15 minutes with instruction. Typically you can crank through this in like 10. So they have a video to follow and all that, it goes pretty quick. All right, gang, any other questions, feel free to text me or to email me. I got to jump off. I've got another class starting with some of my clients here in a few minutes. I got to get set up for, but I appreciate you joining me. You can see why we cut it short the other day, because I wanted to spend a good hour going through all this with you and make sure you get it and you know how to do them. Practice them, watch this video back. I'll send it to you. If you have any cues, questions, concerns about how to do them, let me know. We'll get to it, and I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you then. All right, gang.